Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, let's be clear. We're really talking about whether or not we are going to cut the authorized size of the Delaware Police Department. What we're talking about is the facts that right now, today, not a year ago, not 2 years ago, but today, this city has rising crime. We've been through this before, but we've added some units, which now we can no longer staff, which had an impact on that crime. Why were our statistics high in 2006? Well, we decided finally to make some moves, and we did it, Mr. President. We started reclaiming the streets. Are we going to go back on that commitment? I am not. When I ran, one of the things that I definitely told people is that budgeting is not about shared sacrifice. Budgeting is not about, oh, well, everything's equal. All of the departments are equal. Well, I'm sorry to say, but they are not. There's a couple departments in this city, Mr. President, that if people aren't staffed well enough, people die. And right now, Mr. President, I am submitting that people in our city are suffering, that the economic development of this city is suffering, which is causing our financial problems. New York City was on the verge of bankruptcy, Mr. President. The verge of bankruptcy. It was on the verge of lost 1 million people, an eighth of its population in a few years. But how did the turnaround come about? It started by restoring confidence in security. That's how it started. They started by supporting their police, and what happened? Investment came back. Tax revenue came back. The city today has a murder rate 1/3 of what it did back then in a greater population. It is the city is now one of the safer big cities in America. Why? Because they understood that even though they had to make sacrifices, what you don't sacrifice is the basic safety of the citizens. When I walk down the streets, Mr. President, the citizens tell me that, you do what you have to do. Just make sure I have police and my streets are safe, my sanitation and my trash is picked up, and I can turn my lights on and have my water, and you figure out the rest. Okay, Mr. President, that's where budgeting is. Budgeting is priorities. It's about our values. I tell you, Mr. President, some people say, oh, it's not a problem. Mr. President, my own son went out to the van to get something, and some wannabe gangsters knocked them down to try to see what they could get, Mr. President. This is real. Double murder, just blocks from my house. I am sick of it, Mr. President. And you know what we can do? We need a comprehensive approach, Mr. President. A comprehensive approach. But we cannot do that without starting with the police, without starting with our police units being fully manned, without having police in our communities. Right now, they're so overwhelmed with the complaints, they have to basically chase the radio. What we need is some prevention. When we had community policing, our complaints were down because you had police in the community, able to preempt some of it. The visible presence. Mr. President, our complaints are, as of September 30th of this year, 25,632. That's up 20.8% since 2009. Mr. President, our complaints are up from last year, and most disturbing is the type of crime that we are seeing. The type of crime, I mean, you look at a 14-year-old is knocked down and robbed. What, broad daylight? In Bicentennial? Not exactly a bad neighborhood. Mr. President, you're looking at the fact that Elderly people aren't safe. People used to leave their doors unlocked. What happens now if you leave your door unlocked? Armed intruders come in. Not once, not twice. But we're starting to see home invasions. Mr. President, this isn't a political issue. If we take, Mr. President, and we say, you know, we're going to not fill these police positions, you know what that will save me? It will save me this, Mr. President, $1 a month. You know, hey, I don't like to let go of $1. I like saving money. And people will tell you, try to get this dollar from me. It's not going to be easy. But what happens, Mr. President, that one time is, but that dollar is not worth my family's safety. It is not worth the economic development and jobs for this city. It is not worth it's not worth giving up my wife's ability to walk down the streets after dinner and get exercise. We have to act. We have to act now, Mr. President.
Yeah, forgive me, sir. The chair's been tolerant and kind of let everybody run a little bit here. We're technically under questions for staff, and I feel like we're starting to debate a motion that has